So the first common question is, what is WordPress? Well, to simplify, WordPress is a CMS or a content management system. And in even easier terms, I would say it's a website building software. Typically, websites are built with code. But as you can probably guess, the common man, including me, cannot write code to build a website because it requires a certain set of skills. So WordPress is a software layer that comes in between and gives you a simple interface to create a website. So if you had to create a new page, you'd probably have to write a lot of code, right? So WordPress makes it simple for you to add new pages, add images to your website, and maintain data, display dynamic data, and everything else that you need to create a website. We've done a little longer video explaining what is WordPress that'll be linked in the description, and all the resources I'll mention will also be linked in the description. So if you have follow-up questions, you can either leave a comment or watch the additional videos that I'm talking about and you'll have all your questions answered. The second most common question I see is, what's the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org? So as I said, WordPress is just a piece of software. So what does the .com and .org mean? Well, technically WordPress can be delivered to customers, that means use, in two different ways. The WordPress.org website is the center for downloading WordPress for free. That means you can download the WordPress software and use it however you like. So that's the completely free option of using WordPress, technically the software part. WordPress.com still offers WordPress, but it offers services on top of it. That means hosting, management, everything else. So the WordPress.com service, technically the WordPress part is free, but it offers some additional services which you can pay for if you go for the premium plans. So if you use WordPress.com, you can get a free website built with a temporary domain name if you just want to test out WordPress. But if you're serious about building a website, then I would recommend you go the WordPress.org route. And most videos on our channel, or I say all videos on our channel, refer to WordPress.org. And even in the context of this video, when I speak about WordPress, you should assume that I'm referring to WordPress.org. We've done a detailed video about WordPress.com versus org. We'll highlight the differences in a little more detail. Again, that'll be linked in the description of this video as well, so make sure to check it out. The third most common question that I see about WordPress is, which hosting plan or which WordPress plan should I get? Now, I'm assuming that you're referring to WordPress.org. So in the case of WordPress.org, you have to buy external hosting and also a domain name to connect to your website. Now, if you go to the link in the description of this video, you'll find a link to bluehost.com. So if you use that specific link to purchase hosting, you'll get a great price for hosting. You'll get a domain name for free for an entire year, and then you can host your website. Now, when it comes to the pricing plans, it completely depends on how many websites or how much traffic you're expecting. But if you're starting out and just building a website for fun or for your small business, then the most entry-level plan is the most suitable that we would recommend. As your website scales and gets more traffic, demands more resources, you can always upgrade to a more premium plan. But using the link in the description, you'll again get a domain name for free, hosting for a ridiculously low price, and you can build a lot of websites. I think there's a lot of resources down there. So go check it out. Link will be in the description. The next common question about WordPress is WordPress free? Yes, but it requires a little bit more of context on what I'm talking about. So as I said, WordPress is free. The software WordPress is actually free. It's actually open source and distributed under the GPL license. Technical language apart, you can download the software and do anything with it that you like. But to host a website with WordPress, it requires additional services so that your website can stay online. That means having a domain name, a hosting, and connecting that with WordPress. So the WordPress part is free, but domain name and hosting do require a little bit of money to spend. And think about having your domain name and hosting as a mobile phone number and a cell service. The operating system on your phone is usually free, right? You don't pay for the operating system, but you pay for the phone number and also the cell service that you connect to. So that's how the hosting and domain name connect to WordPress. And as I said, you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to host your website. It's actually less than just a few dollars a month. So if you want to understand how you can get cheap domain name and hosting, technically the domain name for free for an entire year, the link in the description will help you out. The next question I usually see about WordPress is, are WordPress plugins free? Yes, but requires a little more context to understand. If you go to WordPress, the URL I'll share on the screen as well, the WordPress plugin repository, all the plugins you see there are free. But the context is more important. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm pretty sure you have a smartphone. I have an Android smartphone, but the iPhone smartphone will also work, or the iPhones will also work. On both iOS and Android, you have something called the Play Store or the App Store, where you can download additional apps on your phone. Now, consider that as very similar to how you can download plugins on your WordPress website. Now, when you go to the App Store or Play Store on your device, then you see a lot of apps that you see are usually free. Some are paid, that you have to pay for them. But even with free apps, some are completely free and some apps have some in-app purchases. That means once you purchase, if you need additional features or need to unlock some additional features, then you can pay a small subscription or a one-time fee to unlock those features. Plugins work the same way, but the only difference is that anything you see in the WordPress repository is completely free. You don't have to pay upfront, but you can use the plugin, download it on your website, and use it absolutely free. But if you require additional features, many plugins offer pro features which you can unlock for a small price. So that's how plugins technically are free, but if you need pro features or professional plugins, then you have to pay for them. Now I'm talking about just the plugins on the WordPress repository. You can also purchase plugins from other repositories or other, let's say, micro marketplaces or even third-party websites, which might be free or might ask you to pay upfront. So there are both ways that plugins work. You can have plugins that you have to pay upfront for, but any plugin in the WordPress repository by law or by, say, guidelines has to be free, but in-app purchases or, I say, additional pro features can be chargeable. The next question is technically a follow-up of the previous question. The question is, are WordPress themes free? Well, the same question or our same logic applies to themes as well. You can go to the WordPress repository either from your website directly by going into the appearance and theme section or by going into WordPress.org's repository, and all the themes you'll see will be free to use. But as I said, you can have third-party marketplaces where you can purchase themes or third-party, let's say, theme makers that you can download or purchase their themes directly from their site. So once again, anything you see in the WordPress repository will be free, at least no upfront cost will be required. But for additional features, you might need to pay. And again, it's not mandatory. Only if you need the pro features, you can decide to pay. For third party, either you can have them for free or same way as it works in the repository, you download and get the free features and then you upgrade, or you can just upgrade or pay and get the premium version directly. It works both ways. But anything in the repository is completely free to use for a limited set of features, or sometimes it's completely free as well. The next common question I see is, are WordPress websites good? Well, the answer is very simple to understand. If you see all the websites in the world, there are probably 1 billion websites already, and 44% of the entire world's website are built with WordPress. So that gives you an idea that is WordPress good enough? Pretty sure it is good. Otherwise, 44% of the entire internet's websites won't be powered by WordPress, right? So WordPress websites are indeed very, very good. The next common question, which I've technically already answered, but I'll answer again, are WordPress websites free? Well, technically yes and no. Again, as I said, the WordPress software is free. You can get hundreds of plugins for free, themes for free. So even if you have to build the best looking website, most of the software is free. But sites also require domain name and hosting for you to use them on the internet. And domain name and hosting, as I already explained, are like phone number and a cell service. The domain name is like a phone number that people can use to connect to you. That means they can type it in and go to your website. And the cell service is like the hosting that you have to make sure to have to make sure your website is online or available to everybody else as well. So the domain name and hosting part is not free, but it's very affordable. But the software, themes, plugins are mostly, or I say almost free to use. So if you want to build a website, first of all, you can go into the link in the description and check out Bluehost link and get the hosting at a ridiculously low price, a domain name for free. And if you want help on how to build a website, there are two different ways. We have a tutorial link down in the description of this video on how to build a website, and that will teach you everything about how to build a website in just a couple of hours. And if you're not a tech savvy guy and you don't want to spend the time learning how to build a website, then you can use WPBeginner's Pro services, which are website design services, SEO services, all the kinds of services you can utilize. They're very affordable. So even if you don't know anything about website building and you don't want to spend the time to invest to learn, then you can always just opt for WPBeginner's Pro services, and we'll help you design a completely beautiful website according to your needs. The next common question I see about WordPress is, are WordPress websites slow? Well, this is a very ambiguous question because it can mean anything. It's like asking the question, are cars slow? Well, it depends who's driving the car, what car is it, how are they driving it, all the factors about cars, and like if the car is in good shape as well. Similar to this, there can be hundreds of factors that can affect the website speed. So technically, WordPress itself is not slow. WordPress is great at speed, but it depends on the environment you host it on that determines if your website is slow or not. So it depends on your hosting provider and how you've optimized your website and all sorts of factors. So make sure to first choose a great hosting provider because that makes a huge difference. So make sure to check out links in the description to recommended hosting providers that you can use and build your website with. That's the first thing. The next few things you can do on your website to improve your website speed particularly is to optimize your images, make sure lazy loading is turned on, and all sorts of factors. So what I'll do is I'll link down a few different videos that we've done on performance optimization on our channel that you can watch and implement the changes on your website. Or you can use WP Beginner's Pro services for website speed optimization, which is very affordable, and just hand over your website to experts so that they can figure out what's wrong with your website, or if your website is just slow in general, and they can fix your website and improve its speed. So all the links that I mentioned will be linked in the description. Make sure the website is up to speed. The next common question I see about WordPress is, can WordPress host my domain or my website? Well, to understand this, you'll have to go back and watch the second question I answered, which is the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So if you're talking in the context of WordPress.org, then no. WordPress.org is just a piece of software that you can download. Then you have to connect it with WordPress and hosting, or as a domain name and hosting, to make your website go live. But technically, if you use WordPress.com, then yes, WordPress can host your domain name and hosting. And even in the free plan of WordPress, you can get hosting for free, but I think the domain name is not part of that plan. So you'll need a temporary domain name, something along the lines of yourwebsite.wordpress.com as your domain name if you want to do it for free. But if you upgrade to any of the pro plans, you can connect it to your personal domain name, any domain you like. So technically, yes, but in the context of WordPress.org, no. You have to actually get them separately and connect them, but it's very easy. And if you watch the video on how we build a website, it actually takes a few minutes of time, no technical skills required. So very easy to do. The next common question about WordPress is, can WordPress be used for e-commerce? Absolutely. WordPress is designed for lots of different solutions. But technically, out of the box, WordPress doesn't have e-commerce functionality. But with the magic of plugins, you can add e-commerce functionality. For example, if you want to sell physical products, ship them, t-shirts, shoes, socks, jackets, then use WooCommerce, which is a great solution built on top of WordPress. It's just a free plugin you can install in your site, and in a few minutes, you can learn anything about, or I say, start selling online instantly. And what you can do is watch the video that I'll link in the description on how to completely set up WooCommerce for your website. That's the first thing. But if you want to sell digital products, for example, let's say photographs, software, PDFs, books, anything else, then you can use something like Easy Digital Downloads, which is a plugin designed specifically to sell digital products. So that's also a great solution. You can use both softwares depending on the use case that you have. So physical products, WooCommerce, and digital products, Easy Digital Downloads. But yes, WordPress is absolutely designed for e-commerce. The next common question about WordPress that I see is that, can WordPress handle heavy traffic? Absolutely, but it requires some context to answer the question. As I said, WordPress is just a piece of software. How you use it or where you host it will make the majority of the difference when it comes to heavy traffic. Now, heavy word is quite relative. For someone, 30 visitors a day can be heavy, and for some large websites, 1 million visitors might not be heavy at all. So you have to kind of define heavy to understand what kind of traffic you're looking at. But most hosting providers will give you a good range to understand what kind of visitors you can support for a particular hosting plan. So if you, of course, go for the cheapest hosting plan, then you'll have limited resources, enough to survive a small business website. But if you're planning to spend a lot of money on traffic, get a lot of visitors, thousands, hundreds and thousands of visitors a month, maybe the smallest plan on an e-commerce website or a hosting provider will not cut it. So you'll have to spend a little bit of money and have additional resources dedicated to your server so that your WordPress website can survive. And you might need to do some additional performance management, like having CDNs or some load balancing to make sure your website performs the best. So the technical answer for, can WordPress handle heavy traffic? Yes, but context required, and it depends. The next common question I see about WordPress is, can WordPress be used offline? Absolutely, but it requires a little more understanding on how to do it. Well, as I said, WordPress is a piece of software that you have to install on a server. So if you want to use it offline, you have to kind of build a small web server on your computer. There are a few different ways to do it. There's popular solutions out there that you use. For example, aceept is one, but it's a little more technical than what most people will be comfortable with. So what I recommend is download a piece of software that WordPress has developed called WordPress Studio. It's a standalone software for Windows and Mac. I'm assuming that it's released for both. And you can just download and install it as like any app or software for your computer. And then once installed, it'll create all the setup necessary to build a temporary website for you. So it'll give you a temporary domain name, and then you can use the website, log in, do everything else that you would do, and it'll work completely offline. Now, do remember that website being offline means that you will be able to see it on your computer, but most other people, or I say all other people around the world, will not be able to access your website even if they use the right domain name, because it works only on your computer. But the other way to use WordPress, if you want to get familiar with this, is WordPress Playground. WordPress Playground is an online playground for you to test out WordPress. So all you have to do is go to the website that I'll link here on the description and also on the screen, and you can just test around WordPress, do anything you like. Now, the benefit of that is that it's completely temporary, so you can do anything you like and just completely destroy the website if you don't like it. So WordPress, if you want to use it completely offline, then use the solution I mentioned, WordPress Studio. But if you want to use it in your browser and you have internet connectivity, but you don't want to build a permanent website, then WordPress Playground is a better choice. The next most common question about WordPress I see is, can WordPress host videos? Absolutely, but requires a little more context to understand. WordPress can accept a lot of things, including videos, but it's your server that's mostly will not be optimized for handling videos. Now think about it like this. Handling video is a specialized task and requires a lot of system resources. If I have to give you an example or an analogy to explain, think of your website server as a car and a video as being the load of an elephant. You can technically drive an elephant around on a regular car, but it's not recommended because it'll probably break down the car and the performance of the car will be terrible. In a similar fashion, you can have video uploaded to your website directly using the media library, but it's not recommended. So the solution to that is just use any external service to host the video, then embed the video on your website. For example, if you have a video on YouTube, you can take that video's link, embed it on your website, and users will not know the difference because if they click on the video will not take them to YouTube, it'll play right on your website. So you can use YouTube, Vimeo, Wistia, and all the different video service providers. Even WordPress's Jetpack has a solution for hosted service, or use any video CDN that's available. I personally am using Bunny for my website and it works great. But in most cases, just uploading videos to YouTube first and then embedding on your website is good enough. Unless you need a specialized solution, that should be your go-to solution. So can WordPress handle videos? Absolutely, but not like this or not directly uploading to your website because your server is not designed for that. The next common question I see is, can WordPress accept payments? Yes, but not out of the box. The power of plugins is very important. So if you use any plugin on your website which is for payments, then absolutely WordPress can accept payments. You have WP Simple Pay that you can use to accept payments without a shopping cart. You have WP Forms that you can use to accept payments. You can use MemberPress for membership websites, for recurring payments, and there are a variety of solutions that you can use to accept payments. WordPress has their own plugins set called WooPay that works with WooCommerce. Stripe has their own payment plugins. So the idea is that, first of all, WordPress can accept payments, yes. You need a plugin to connect with a payment processor, for example, Stripe, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and then using all three together, that means WordPress, the piece of software, that means the plugin, and the payment processor. Once you connect all of them, WordPress will start accepting payments. And by the way, I've just recorded a video on 4 different ways to collect recurring payments in WordPress. So that'll also be linked down in the description. If you want to collect recurring payments in WordPress, that's the one video that you need to watch. The next common question I see about WordPress is that, can WordPress send emails? Yes, but again, it requires a little more of context to understand. WordPress has the capability of send emails, but they're not very reliable out of the box because WordPress is not an email management software. So it might be able to send emails like password recovery or like similar account creation emails. But if you're trying to send out a lot of emails and you have some control over emails, then WordPress native email functionality is not something you should be looking at. What you should be looking at is looking at a professional email service provider. For example, ActiveCampaign, Drip, or all the different email services provided out there. And then connect your WordPress website to that service directly using a plugin called WP Mail SMTP. So what it does is this plugin allows you to have any SMTP service connect to your WordPress website. I personally use this plugin on my website and I have connected to Amazon AWS. So by using this service, technically whenever I trigger any email going out from my website, my WordPress website connects with WP Mail SMTP, which connects to Amazon AWS, and the emails are actually sent out from Amazon, but they do appear that they are coming from my website directly. It's a little of a technical setup, but it doesn't require a lot of effort to put in. If you're already using an email service provider, you might just have to connect them once using your API key, and then whenever you send any email from your website, the service will be directly connected to and send the emails out. So technically WordPress can send emails, but not in the way you think. If you want to send professional emails, then this is the solution you have to go for. The next common question I see about WordPress is, how does WordPress make money? That's a very important question to understand because if WordPress is free, who is the product? How does WordPress make money? Well, the WordPress product is completely free. As I mentioned, the software is completely free and you're not charged for anything and your data is not collected as well. So it's not like you are the product. How WordPress does make money is by offering professional services for hosting. So if you remember the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org, WordPress.org, the software is free. WordPress.com is a service that allows you to host your website. And that is not free, but the software is completely free to use. So they make money by offering pro services that are connected with WordPress. And another income source for WordPress is selling premium plugins. If you didn't know, WordPress owns WooCommerce and all their companion plugins. And WooCommerce has a lot of free plugins, but they also have some premium plugins. For example, WooPayments and some other plugins for WordPress or WooCommerce that are charged on a subscription basis. So that's an additional revenue stream for WordPress. But again, WordPress is completely free. Only the services associated with WordPress might cost a little money. The next common question I see about WordPress is a very simple and technical question. It says, what WordPress version am I using? Well, it's very easy. All you have to do is just go to the dashboard of your WordPress website, click on the dashboard, you'll be taken inside the dashboard, and somewhere on that screen, you'll see what WordPress version you are using currently. It's very simple. I'll put a screencast on the screen so you can actually see what I'm talking about. The next common question I see about WordPress is, what WordPress plugins do I need? So the simplified answer to that is that it completely depends on your needs, but there are some plugins that every website can benefit from. For example, every website can benefit from a forms plugin like WP Forms, an SEO plugin like All-in-One SEO, a code management plugin like WP Code, and some other plugins. And what I've done is I think I've recorded a video recently on most essential WordPress plugins and what they do. So I'll recommend you go and watch that video. I think it lists around 20 different plugins. So those 20 plugins I would say are essential. And again, you can make the choice on what plugins you need and what you don't need. So you can skip the ones you don't want and keep the ones that you do want. So to conclude the answer, it completely depends on what kind of functionality you want to add to your website, and the plugins you'll need or use will completely depend on exactly that. The next two or more questions that I most commonly see about WordPress is, what plugins, theme, and hosting is a website using? Well, the answer is very simple to find out if you just know this website. The website is called aceept.wp.com, and if you enter any website URL and click on the Analyze button, it'll analyze the website and tell you if it's using WordPress, what theme is it using, what hosting provider is using, and also try to analyze what plugins a website is using. Using it, you can easily understand if a website is using WordPress, what themes and plugins using, so you can kind of replicate the entire functionality if you want to and build your own website. Again, the link will be in the description for aceept.wp.com. The next most common question I see about WordPress is, when was WordPress first released? Short answer is that WordPress was released on 27th of May 2003, and it used to look something like this. Another fun fact you might enjoy is that after WordPress, WooCommerce was released in 2011. And the last most common question I could find about WordPress is a question called, will WordPress replace developers? Well, I'm not the most qualified person to answer this question, but I can confidently say practically the answer is no. Because as WordPress goes, developers ecosystem, or let's say the requirement for developer, grows as well. Because WordPress requires developers or is built by developers, plugins requires developers, themes requires developers, custom solutions require developers. So as WordPress grows, the theme ecosystem, the plugin ecosystem, and the requirement for more developers will be there. Now, AI is definitely going to play a role here. But as I said, I'm not the most qualified person to give a forecast about what will happen 5 years down the line. But I can confidently say that good and qualified people always stay in business. So if you're thinking about getting into WordPress development, then don't worry. It'll always be something that's in demand. And that's all the questions I have for you today. If you have any other questions that you'd like me to answer on WordPress, leave that in the comments, and all the links in the description. Go check them out, all the relevant videos and links. You'll definitely benefit from this. And if you want to continue your WordPress education, then there's a red button on the screen. Just click on it, the subscribe button, and just make sure to like this video and share this video as well. You're watching Raj from WGainer, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.